All right. Thanks, Nick and Karen, for having me here. So I'm Vishu Nandigam. I'm with the San Diego Supercomputer Center at UCSD. I'm also affiliated with Open Topography, which is one of the founding facilities for CDF. So we wanted to talk about AI readiness, but in a narrow context, specific to our Council of Data Facility as providers. AI and ML have become foundational in the earth sciences. There's a lot of use cases now, especially with increased efficiency. You can quickly process and analyze large amounts of data. The NASA Above project, for example, goes through petabytes of data to continuously monitor water levels in the Arctic regions. You can use AI ML to get new scientific insights and discoveries by bypassing human error, biases. One of the examples is EarthNet. It's an ML framework that's able to detect hydrocarbons in the North Sea, so you're able to find new, potential oil and gas outlets. And then there's also enhanced predictive modeling. One of those examples is Aurora, where it's by Microsoft and climate modelers, where they were able to outperform traditional weather forecasting systems. And given yesterday's talk, I also wanted to talk about BurnPro 3D, which is at the Supercomputer Center. It also takes in a lot of topography data, weather data in real time, able to somewhat predict when a fire erupts, which way will it flow, and help firefighters on the ground. So a recent, I think just to outline how much it's growing in earth sciences, at the annual conference of the AGU in December, there were about 402 session proposals submitted only with ML and AI, about almost 2,100 abstracts. Surprisingly, hydrology, or not surprisingly, but hydrology has been leading the use cases here. And if you look back to 2019, that's when we started seeing an increase in that. But again, hydrology was the leading domain in that particular applications. So what is driving the AI adoption and growth? Somebody have a question? No. Oh, okay. Yeah, I had a question. What is driving this growth? And one is the massive volumes of geoscience data sets being collected. Sensor resolutions are getting better, so you're collecting more higher resolution data sets, larger sizes, so it's difficult to go through it through traditional means, so AI/ML comes into play. This is also where data facilities fit in, where we're providing these data sets for consumption to the public, and also providing multiple pathways for access. There's also the growing availability of AI/ML frameworks. Just the fact that these are made available for free to the public, it also lowers the barrier of entry. One of the examples is Meta's segment anything model. If you go back to the previous one, this one was done with zero-shot segmentation. That means there's no training data required to process the data sets. So that's all exciting. There's also the availability of TPU, GPU hardware accelerators in the cloud. These are essential for training and deploying transformer architectures, which are the guiding force between NLP and more recently earth sciences with weather prediction, seismic prediction models, and everything else. And then I would also like to pitch that SDSC has this new supercomputer called Voyager, which has an Intel, I think it's called the Gaudi processor, which is new. So if you are aware of Access, the following to exceed, you can request cycles on that also. And then, of course, there's the open science and community support. ESIP has its ML cluster. NASA has the ML project initiative. ESIP also has the data stewardships and all those things, so that, and of course, the CDF with us here. So the community in itself is very supportive and helping each other in that particular domain. So what are the other community responses out here? AGU has launched a Journal of Geophysical Research, Machine Learning, and Computation. So it provides a dedicated platform for peer-reviewed breakthroughs in this particular space specific to earth sciences, earth and environmental sciences. From funding, I think the collaborations, NSF has launched its collaborations in artificial intelligence and geosciences. It's important to have interdisciplinary collaborations in this particular space to make more breakthroughs. So NSF recognizes that. It's just not NSF, but there are other funding sources coming out, funding calls in this particular domain space. And then there are a lot of guidelines. I think ESIP is one of the, AGU is one of the examples where this particular report came out on I think Douglas is here, who's a co-editor on that. Its goal is to support scientific advancements in AI ML while also ensuring that the use is open, inclusive, and just. So in terms of AI readiness and Council of Data facilities, where do we start? And one quick one is like build on existing frameworks. ESIP came out with the checklist to examine AI readiness. Set of guidelines talking about data quality, data availability, access, and everything else. And I think Doug has a session coming up. Do you want to talk about it, Doug? Yeah. So the original checklist, the original checklist came out a couple of years back, and Doug can talk about that session coming up.
Yes, so the cluster within ESIP, this data readiness cluster, started what we call the AI readiness checklist about a year and a half ago. And so the idea is that we can go through the list of questions to assessing individual data sets, whether they are useful for those AI application development processes. And that we have been piloting that with different data centers and doing some and data producers for assessments. And we got a lot of feedback on how we can move to the next stage to improve it, and also some way can automate some of the assessment. Because right now, a lot of the assessment is quite manual. You have to answer a lot of questions that I was just talking with Matt. It's right now it's not feasible to really automate all those assessment, but part of it can actually be automated. And there are a lot of connections with FAIR principles and other things that can become a synergy, not just for AI, but also improving the fairness in some of the data sets. And so thinking about all those feedback we get, and so at afternoon today, we are working on a session trying to identify the improvement to the checklist and also supporting materials, including the guidance documents for both the data producers as well as the data centers on how those can be used to guide new data sets or the improving the existing data sets in that way. So we welcome everyone to join that session, contribute your feedback. Even if you don't know what checklist is, we're going to give an overview at the beginning so you can also jump in with some of your new perspective for that as well. So hope to see you, I think it's basement level.
Thanks, Doug. I think we'll be coming there to that one also. So one of the things that we've been excited about is this new metadata standard called Croissant. It's headed by Google, Kaggle, and Hugging Face, and a few other organizations. I think it contains elements that are essential for ML data set interoperability. It's an extension of schema.org, so I think it fits in well with CDF because we all worked on project P418, 419 to get a schema.org spec for our data sets. So I think in a way we kind of fall into this particular area where data creators and data repositories. It also, I think, tying into other parts of ESIP, it's modular and extensible. It supports Earth science specific formats like NetCDF, HDF5, also ZAR, and also cloud native geospatial data standards. The other thing is it allows interoperability and ability to exchange these data sets between different platforms while maintaining provenance, versioning, and everything else. So it's still, I think they came out with version 1, but the exciting part is there are also extensions like GeoCroissant, which is very specific to earth science data sets. So you have specific like elements related to geoscience, for example, the spatial resolution, the instrument that captured this data. And then there's also this Croissant responsible AI extension, which talks about like talks about bias, fairness, and it's bias and fairness, which is very important, especially in spatial regions where bias can play a part. You can already see that it's being adopted and used right now. Like, I think if you go to a Google dataset search, you already see that there's a Croissant subsection of what datasets are in the Croissant format. Hugging Face is also supporting it, and they have, apart from dataset cards, which is also interesting to CDF in that sense. Other federal agency initiatives, there's the NIH Common Fund's Bridge to AI, which talks about ethical data sets that they're trying to provide researchers with ethical data sets to use to advance medical research and everything else. There's also the NSF NAIR initiative, where they're providing researchers with compute capabilities, as well as data sets and everything else for advancing AI or AI-specific research use cases. There was a recent NAIR data call, of which we were fortunate enough that open topography got selected. So the people that are participating in that, apart from the data providers, are also the National Data Platform and Hugging Face. So hopefully we get more guidance in what is being proposed there, and then we can feed it back to the Council of Data Facilities. So this is in a way a pitch to join the Council of Data Facilities working group to learn more about those. Some questions for you, so I think.
Maybe before we go to the polling, just ask if there's questions for you.
Yeah, are there any questions? I mean, this is just a rough overview of what's going on right now. Yes?
For those of us that are trying to figure out how to, oh, yes. Hello, everybody out there. So as a data repository, we're trying to figure out basically two different sides for using AI. First, supporting it.
Yeah.
As we know, many clients out there are going to want to use our data for their AI models. But the other one is how we can best make use of it internally, either to create some derivative products and models of our own that we can share, or enhance the way we work. So where's the best place for us to go as professionals to get a handle on what tools we should latch onto and use? How do we actually set up training models? How do we validate them and so forth? Where's the best place that you would recommend?
That's a good question. I think this is there are two sides to this question. One is, as data providers, how do we enable our platform so that people can come in and pull data sets directly into their application for external use? And we found that most of the innovation happens in that space. As the data facility itself using AI models to generate derived products. For example, in open topography, you can use it for canopy gap detection and all that stuff. So hopefully the goal is that when you use those models, you're putting them out also for the community to build on and all that. So that's one way. Does that answer your question in that sense?
Those are the tools that you've demonstrated out there, including the Kaggle and the Hugging Face, all those things. And for someone like myself who's used to traditional computing, I'm bewildered by all of the choices that are there now. And what are these things? What is my journey to get to where I want to get to?
I don't want to answer for all of the Council of Data Facilities, but from an open topography perspective, I think one of our ideas that we're working on is to get on the Hugging Face platform. So have our data sets. I don't think Hugging Face allows you to federate data through their data cards, unless you're a pro user or you pay them money or something like that. But One of the ideas is to get some sample data sets in there, create an organization within Hugging Face where your data sets are made available there, along with some of our algorithms that you push into this thing. So it could be a bigger effort with the Council of Data Facilities. So it's a community that develops all these models and puts it up on Hugging Face or any other platform. So that's one option. Sorry, Douglas. But this is also where being part of the CDF would help guide.
Just want to quickly respond. And so within ESEP, the machine learning cluster that put out some of the review papers about the practical implementation of machine learning in Earth and geospatial sciences that was published earlier last year. And so the group is now working on another paper looking at the workflows of machine learning processes and including the preparation of data in the workflows and how that enable. And so that would be another one group to engage with specifically with machine learning. And I know NSF has been funding some of the infrastructure projects, including one project called Gardens, that's like through the University of Chicago and Argonne group that is providing a place where you can deposit all the models in the model garden. And you can implement the models there as well. So they have a way to easily connect with data and other things in that. Yeah, I forgot the PI's name. Ben, PI's last name. Ben. Yeah. Yes, right. And so that is another. And we have a RCA and Research Coordination Network, which Karen and I are both co-PI of. We are trying to figure out what do we mean by fair for machine learning that including both data and model that can be considered software, can be considered other type of the digital objects, and what that means for reproducibility and AI readiness as well. So that happy to chat more after the session.
I'll just put a quick follow on. In addition to the garden work is part of a larger framework of things where people are trying to build frameworks to support this. We have a grant with Wenwen Lee and Ben Gawowski's part of that. We did an introduction to AI training for geoscientists to basically familiarize people with this stuff. It's a week-long kind of like modular course, and it's online and free. And we're looking for feedback on what is the best way to sort of introduce new researchers to this topic area. So it starts from like AI readiness and like how do you get your data ready, all the way through how do you manage models, how do you run models, how do you do this within, say, Python workflows, et cetera. So there's, I think, a series of 20 or so modules on the cyber2a.github.io website if you're interested in that. And there's a whole module in there on Garden.
If you could put a link in the notes, Matt, to that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the other question was, is that part of the AI ML cluster, ESIP AI ML cluster? Is that being discussed there? Okay, all right. Okay, thanks. So, Karen.
So we are moving next into sort of a discussion component about how the CDF as a community can move forward. I think, Rob, your question was kind of the question we want to address. How do we learn what we need to learn? How do we share what we want to share? To get going, we've got a few polling questions just to get a sense of where the community is at and what it's interested in. So if you can grab that QR code and then do the poll question that you see. I'm crossing my fingers that this all works for everyone. And those of you who are online, we welcome you to participate as well. Oh, there we go. It's working. Seeing those numbers coming in. Anybody having trouble with this? If the QR code doesn't work, you can use on the bottom left, that URL. Nobody wants to go too extreme.
People are saying when you fill it out, it changes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think the slide, the poll should remain open if you haven't had a chance. But yeah, it looks like we're kind of in the middle of understanding what AI readiness means for us, so, we don't need a lot of definitions. Next question is, how important is AI readiness to your repository, to the work that you are doing? Ooh, okay. You had another minute? Okay, so that's interesting. We clearly have quite a few repositories that have identified AI readiness as an extremely high priority, and others that are sort of spread out.
Curious as to those who don't think it's important, is there a reason, or what kind of data sets are we serving from that particular repository?
Maybe we can loop back to that when we get to discussion. I just want to make sure, because we've got quite a few of these, and with the timing, but we do. It's a good question, and let's get back to that. My repository understands what it should do with respect to AI readiness. Like we understand what the goal is, we know what we need to do or implement, and we at least know, if not ready to do it. All right, so we're kind of seeing that a lot of repositories said it's very important, but maybe they're not completely sure what they should be doing. So there's a target out there, but the pathway there is a little fuzzy. This is great. We're all in here together. We can work on that. And how many of you are where you want to be right now is this question. So, we've hit the target. We are doing what we think we should be doing right now.
We definitely need AI in our budget proposal.
All right, so AI is really important. We're not completely sure what we need to get there, and we're not where we want to be yet, is the, is the picture coming out of that. Okay, so now we flip into a couple of questions about what would help to kind of seed our discussion for as CDF. How do we think about this? Is there anything that we want to do together? So would anything in the realm of guidance, training materials, examples from others, knowledge kinds of things help you, do you think, with your AI readiness? Okay, so please continue clicking if you haven't finished yet, but it looks like there's a pretty strong pattern of yes, some help of this type would be useful. How about not sort of knowledge or information or documentation or guidance or examples, but actual tools, technologies, working things that are missing that would help you? All right, so again, fairly positive on that, though a bit more of a spread. How about funding? for how many folks is just funding. Look, I had to throw it in just so we have something to tell our funding agencies, right? All right. So for those of you in the number 1 or number 2 categories, like, well done. I don't know how you did it, but well done there. All right, so here we get to, so we've seen a need for informational resources, training, documentation, examples, that kind of thing. We've seen a need for tools. This is where we can get more specific, and you can write in, like, what do you think would help you, your repository, with this AI readiness? And we'll give this a minute or two because it takes longer for people to type answers. All right, we've got checklists, guidelines and checklists, a good definition of AI readiness, tutorials, standards, an AI that tells us what we need, more checklists, examples of using, also using AI-ready data, not just what AI-ready data looks like, but people using AI-ready data. AI readiness rubric, example workflows, pro cons of different tools, okay? Scalable tools to assist in readiness, use cases. So staff, so expertise or consultants that you can access, workshops, guides, publications, access to consultants, okay, that's expertise again, more guidance, software tools to generate metadata, machine learning specific metadata, successful examples. Limits definitions describing what data isn't important for AI. Okay, so AI readiness may not be the goal for every piece of data out there. How do we make those decisions perhaps? Interactions with Python packages, tools to convert file types into AI actionable, knowing the user base, dialogue with AI people, more AI expertise. Okay. Folks still typing. Another minute. So please feel free to continue to add. But I think at this point, we're gonna move into the just community discussion. We've identified AI as important. We're not all ready, we're not all where we want to be. We don't all know how to get there. We have a set of needs around it. So the next question is, as the CDF, as this community, what do we want to, what can we, what do we want to do together to move in that direction? I will make that a question. Thoughts on anything the CDF can do as a community? Too big. Oh, yes, Rob.
My thought is, as a community, I think it will be great for brave souls to bring to us at the regular meetings, whether they're successful or not, their attempts to, whatever their goal is, their attempt to make use of machine learning to meet those ends. And so we can actually see kind of the steps and the thought process that they were going through. It gives us, the rest of us, something to go, oh, that sparks some ideas. Maybe I'll try that out, and so forth, because we've got a lot of minds here, and maybe all of our minds can kind of start to come up with some patterns.
Okay. So learning from each other as groups can bring their story for what they were trying to do, why, how they were doing it, and how it all came out, sort of the good, the bad, the ugly of it worked, it didn't, this was harder than we expected, this worked great. Okay. As we go to Douglas, I had a question on the checklists. There were several requests for checklists and sort of defining what AI readiness needs. How many people in the room, I don't know if it's fair to out people, but so the question is, were you aware of the AI readiness checklist work that Doug and others had produced? And there's still sort of gaps, there are things that doesn't fulfill with respect to what is AI readiness and what needs to be done? Or maybe that the group just wasn't fully aware of that resource?
I guess one thing one thing to think about is, so AI readiness, right, is, in theory, or one hopes, if your data is available in some machine readable form, like the AI will maybe make it ready for you in the future. So, the question is, like, how much resources, what's sort of what's the minimum level? People have to trade off, right? So, you have croissants, you have various standards to access the data, but those will be changing, AI will be writing them, how do we evolve towards that sort of? How much work do you do that the AI won't do for you in the future? So that's a tricky thing, I guess.
I know that's something that I personally wrestle with for repositories, like just really good, fair data. Is that enough of a foundation to support maybe an easier lift to AI readiness in the future when there's more tools and perhaps more automation around that? Do other repositories have thoughts on sort of that trade-off between just doing good data curation now and kind of hoping it becomes easier in the future versus kind of wading into the new technologies and the new approaches?
So just a small comment on that. I think just the fact that Croissant builds on schema.org kind of answers the question, saying that you need to have minimum fair standards, and then you can make the jump to the AI-ready aspect or AI-specific metadata elements aspect of things. I think Doug wondered.
Yeah, sorry, Doug,
Jackie, do you have any follow-up on the conversation? Because I'm going to start a new topic. Okay, cool. So I think going slightly, I totally agree that fairness is really important to be part of the efforts for AI readiness. And right now, we're also trying to do a cross-mapping between the FAIR principles and the checklists that we have. And what we are finding is that not all the checklists question can address all those fairness principles, but there's also parts of the quality components within the scientific data quality components in the checklist it's not necessarily addressing the FAIR principle. So there are gaps between the two elements or efforts that are going on. That's why we're trying to map all those things. So if you do one assessment, some of those can be easily transferred to the other if you have those cross-mapping, the translation of those assessments. And the other, I was just thinking about the suggestion of some of the information or lessons learned sharing. So I know just thinking about AI for data repositories or AI for data management, data stewardship, then there are different ongoing efforts. I know NOAA has different projects going on. One is using AI to suggest the completion of certain metadata fields. And then there's also the chatbot development and how can you develop those like chatbot to support the users to use the data in your data repository and then to get those authoritative response rather than people going to ChatGPT and find those erroneous like answers about your specific data. And there are other development like directly having those tools to directly prepare or analyzing the data to the user, basically the human way of getting the scientific insights through AI with the data in the data repository. So there are a lot of things going on like that between different agency data centers. So it would be great, maybe AI for the data facility dialogue series that can happen in those monthly meetings.
So I'm just going to pivot to a different perspective. So we talk about the FAIR, all caps, FAIR. So I'm going to talk about fairness in small caps for the data providers. So I'm the one that filled in all those lower statistics about knowing nothing about AI readiness. So as a data provider, we rely on metrics and citations to show that people are using our data. Is there anything in the AI readiness, or can I assume that when AI is scraping our data sets, that they're also providing acknowledgements? Is that built into that AI acknowledgements of the data that is being used? Because we're funded to provide these data, but we also have our we have to sort of show NSF, I'm with NCAR, for example, that our data are fair, but people are also downloading and using it. And so we have that ability to capture those statistics. What I'm kind of unsure of is if AI is capturing our metadata, but it's also capturing the acknowledgements and also providing that to the person who will be looking at the end results of what they're scraping. But that's just a consideration and a concern that I'm hoping would be captured and discussed in any kind of AI readiness that gets taken into account. Thank you.
Did you have a response on this topic or yeah, so we have a.
Hi, Corey Levinson here. I think that we need to clarify a bit what the end like when we say AI readiness, there's a lot of different directions that could go in, or reasons why something could be made AI ready. And I think the easiest thing to think about and to be worried about is like similar to what you have the New York Times suing OpenAI for the ingestion of all of these articles, and it's like it gets sucked up into the foundation models, and now there's nobody going to the sources. But there is a use case of AI readiness that's more about making it easier for scientific communities, for researchers today, to be able to discover relevant data sets, relevant research, and assist that in their own scientific processes. And so I think what you're describing there as a concern maybe becomes less of one, depending on what kind of use cases we're thinking about, and what kind, like AI readiness, but with what goal in mind. And in disentangling that, it might be a bit easier to talk about, the concerns for making research, for supporting research for existing human researchers, for AI to support that, will have different concerns than big AI labs, sucking up everything that they can from whatever AI-ready data repositories are out there.
Yeah, I think the question I agree with what Corey has said. I think when we're talking AI, there are different types of use case in this sense, right? A lot of times when we now talk about AI, it's always about ChatGPT or generative AI, which are more those larger language models, and how that ingested a lot of those data that it's not really, they did not want to disclose any of those information because they are secret for their models. They don't want other people to know. But on more those like scientific use of those data for using, for example, the CSM model output to do those climate modeling efforts, those people are actually, or the developers are actually acknowledging the data being used in training those applications, right? So that is that's scientists, it's better than the commercial ChatGPT related like development in that case. But within Hugging Face and all those like more mainstream industry practices, they are also acknowledging the data used in the training of those specific models as well, because Hugging Face can connect data with model. So what data was used in training those models, And I think going back to croissant, that is another way that you can really, the machine interaction between the data sets itself to and linking it to the model on those platforms, Kaggle, Hugging Face, and or others. There's linkage and provenance can trace back through those standard metadata information for that. So those are, I think DOI is part of the field within the croissant. So you will include the DOI in the croissant, like metadata in there. So that's linked together. And
Can you query the AI to say reveal what your sources are?
that's a question to ask for the people on the large language model side. And I think right now they won't disclose that information because they have guardrails to not disclose that.
The question pertains exactly to that. If the information is disclosed.
So I think what Douglas is saying is that we're conflating the sort of general purpose AI with a researcher who's addressing a scientific problem using AI. And if it's a researcher using AI to address a scientific problem, then they should say that these are the data sources that I use to train my model. Whether they do or not is the same question as to whether they attribute their data for any use. So it's in a pure scientific use, I don't think it's any different as to whether they cite the data. It's just a different use that they're applying it to. When you're looking at these generative AI things like ChatGPT, that's a whole different animal. And that's not what we're really, right.
I have these 10 data sets and I don't pull information.
Just say, yeah, right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have given you that mic back. But yeah, you're right. I mean, science should disclose its data sources. That's what science means.
I'm just one more comments before I hand over the mic. So the models now, for example, the Gemini, which NOAA now have access to, everyone in NOAA can use Gemini. It's a specific license. That data is not disclosed back to Google to retrain their model. But my response is that now Gemini also provides where they got the information to provide you the answer. So you can click on what's the basis of those claims in their response to you. So that can actually links back to, for example, if this is from a blog post from certain people, and then you can go acknowledge that, so that where you get the response from Gemini after you give them the prompt and doing things. So that can be embedded into if you have a chatbot to assisting users using the data from your repository, that those models can provide references to those sources when they give the response out. So the user, I think that go back to becomes user education. Now you should include that as a citation or acknowledgement that the answer you got is from those references. So that goes back to the traditional user education, how to acknowledging the use of those specific information and data.
It's not really an AI readiness problem. It's a human problem. AI exacerbates all things.
More efficient at creating, propagating them.
Sorry, well, one last thing. I think I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying is that the commercial applications of AI with ChatGPT is different than the scientific applications. I think in the science applications, we have data providers who can provide the metadata through croissant responsible AI elements. And also in the science aspect, when you're developing models, or scientists developing models can choose to get those metadata elements, incorporate them, respect the license, respect the provenance, and when you publish the model, publish the metadata along with the model. So that kind of helps with this thing.
I think we need to move on. Can I ask just one more question? We've identified interest in hearing about what other people have tried and how it's worked out for them. Who in this room has a story about sort of moving towards AI readiness in some way that they might be able to share with others? They've given something a try and it's worked, it hasn't worked, but they'd be willing to talk with the group about what they did and how it worked out. Anyone? No.
Does anybody?
Carolina, you do. Okay. So
Has
we're-
anybody implemented the croissant on their data repository and feel that it's like showing up places and people are using it, or is that still a new tech to be done? Nobody? All right, yeah. Not here either, so.
Who actually is planning to do that? Or has a mandate? Yeah. Who actually is doing it, the planning it in the next year? And it's, like for our funder, it's not even in our proposal because we voted.
Yeah, so not one of
So
your,
you see, so we have to shift our priorities to really include AI readiness and training for our staff to do that. So,
yeah, I mean, this is pretty new. It'll be in
Yeah, it's all new
the
to
next proposals that you do will have these features that are, yeah. All right, well,
Sorry, quick answer to that question. I think resources is a big issue, both funding and people time. I think one of the things that we're planning to do is leverage what's already going on in the industry with Google, Hugging Face and all that. Once they come up with that, I think our goal is to make sure that it's not that much of a leap to extend schema.org. And so we're kind of identifying all those initiatives that require the minimal effort on our end and also feed off what the industry is doing. The end goal for us is to make sure our data is available and being used. So it kind of is a sustainability question also. Like the more our data is used, the more impact it has in real world situations, it's useful for us. So it is a difficult balance in that sense. Like how much resources do you dedicate to getting your data AI ready using Croissant or whatever it is. And it's always a challenge in that situation.
yeah.
Thanks. So in that regard, this is a plug for this afternoon session, which is on schema.org validation of metadata for particular use cases. And I think a great use case that we could be considering is whether data sets provide the requisite metadata for AI use through Croissant and stuff. The schema.org cluster has discussed whether or not we want to extend the current guidelines to include Croissant or not. I think there's interest, but nobody really has stepped forward to say, let's do this and let's put the time in to provide some community guidelines about what people should do. When we've looked at data sets that are in the wild, so we've been harvesting schema.org data sets from a wide variety of providers as part of Data One. And one of the patterns I've noticed is that most providers do not provide schema.org metadata about their file level granules within their data sets. And things like Croissant are primarily focused on that file level metadata. So I think we have a distance to go in a community to get to that point where we have the same level of detail that we have in, say, an ISO metadata record that we would have in schema.org. It's pretty, there's a pretty big separation still in real world practice, I think. But this afternoon, validation in schema.org if you're interested.
Thanks, Matt. Let's see here. So in this next section, I felt maybe we could we'll talk about two different sort of topics. I mean, I personally we've had some, proposals in, and, responding from NSF is like way delayed, and, I'll get this in no, oops. Damn, Max. How do I share this? Now I'm off. Oh. There we go. So information is, for me anyway, finding out information about what's going on in the budget landscape, what the future is going to be. Like, does anybody know like what the NSF budget is going to be next year? I mean, the big, beautiful bill, I searched through it with my AI, I couldn't find anything about it. So, I mean, they're talking about like half, right? Half of last year, but there's no, is that true?
No, it's less grim now, right?
It hasn't, right, exactly, so like,
The Senate Appropriations Committee was not carved out much, but the House is carving out 23%. And so now they've got to come up with, they basically sent their recommendations.
okay, that has to get reconciled, and so it looks like maybe, like,
Might be better.
be-
Might actually, I mean.
it could be full, I mean, that's,
That's double what they initially stated.
right. And when we got our rejection, they said soft rejection will leave it in the queue in case, so I guess, you know, that's. No, but I mean, I don't know if it's better than not having funding at all, but I'm not sure, like, we're not really, we just got that and we're trying to figure out like, okay, how do we plan for that? So I don't know, I guess part of our council data facilities is we've tried in the past to trying to figure out a way that we can share resources that takes less effort than the way we're doing it now. And I don't know if we haven't really achieved that. So, you know, in some of our meetings, we've talked about how to, you know, could we share like deep data backup storage in some way, make that more affordable? Can we, you know, sharing compute they're already NSF systems and most of us don't use them, I think, because we have our own custom way of doing things. And moving your whole system to a new platform is a lot of work and you don't want to do that. You know, technical personnel, a lot of our data facilities are small, and so we have, you know, one or a half person if there was some way of sharing that. It seems like when we were successful back in EarthCube, we had this P419 project that all the data facilities could sort of work with, but they were funded, you know, I think their budget was $300K. So we don't have that sort of budget. Is there some project that people think that we could sort of work together on you know, making our data more useful? And I don't know. Right now, everybody's sort of scrambling. So do people have, I guess it's just more wait and see what the budget does. But it would be great for us if we had some way of influencing that, but I don't think, you know, right now. There's this new executive order came out. I don't know how much we want to, you know, try to follow those, but they seem to be somewhat useful where they're trying to have these new gold standards and a lot of, you know, open science, interdisciplinary, so on. I mean, it does fit, you know, some of what we have claimed to want to do. So maybe it'll be interesting to see if there's going to be a big restructuring or we'll just move on to continue to have sort of the system that we already have. The Senate and the Congress and the administration are slightly different. So, is there anything people here would like to try to share? Matt and discussed about, you know, and we were seeing at this conference using like Zenodo or other places to store your data I don't know if that's, more sustainable. Europe, supports Zenodo. Well, in 10 years, what will happen there? I mean, we can say it's more stable and more funding, but it's hard to know. So, Karen?
One thought I had was whether communications material would help, something that explains the value of domain-specific repositories, maybe has, quotes or scientist stories about how they've been critical, something written that we can give to our institutions, our funding agencies, if any of us are involved in sort of lobbying kinds of activities, getting those to our sort of institutional lobbyists, but just sort of some kind of just communications that help us explain the value and the importance of what we do and how it impacts science.
So I have a couple of thoughts on what you asked initially. I'm not sure about shared resources. Like if we do, if the CDF comes together with shared resources, I'd probably be asking 100% of that. So it's usually tough to do that, but shared intellect, shared success stories always helps. Shared, I guess, strategies would always help. CDF is one good example. The ESIP clusters are one good example. In terms of other, when you talk about communications, I think it's hard to make that transition, but usually if, from a technical field, when you say, oh, my data does this, but then Claire is here from Gateways, but she taught us an interesting thing about how you can sell your story, because you want to sell the outcome. You want to tell a story around the data versus saying that we were able to publish this data set, and here's some examples with it. So that's one thing.
Yeah, maybe I can add some clarity on a few points. So I was at another convening Monday and Tuesday, and NSF was there. It was their first time they were actually able to travel. So that was a really impactful conversation. We're continuing to hear from the NAIR pilot portal. I work on that effort. That things are progressing more positively than it was prior. So I think there is kind of a little bit of gleam of light down the tunnel. But they are definitely blocked at the moment in bureaucratic discussions. But they do hope to hear by August, September, real news that they can move forward on. But I see within the community, there are a lot of real use cases coming together. We're starting to see this with SIZE and OAC and NSF more and more. You can even look at the NAIR pilot portal and see demonstration projects that are listed to give examples of how the community is using solutioning today and starting to take those advantages. And I think that's a part of the communication side of what solutions are out there. It might be a little bit of a different domain, but we can start seeing at least the common pattern of what's the workflow and how are repositories engaging in those workflows. One example is the National Data Platform, which is doing an exercise of metadata around data, services and tools. And that's a space that's also working on AI alignment and being able to support workflows in a sustainable and scalable way. So starting to speak with those kind of efforts would be useful, and seeing how either EarthScope, which is using NDP, being able to look into those and starting to have those conversations on what they've experienced so far. And kind of from the value propositioning hat, right? Like how do we as a community continue to share our impact around measurements, and the actual tracking of metrics is so important. I think that being able to validate not only the individual numbers, but the stories that you're hearing from your core communities. What big impactful sciences and steps forward have you been able to take, and how do we effectively communicate that to the funding agencies and also the broader public? We were having a conversation in the wildfire convening earlier this morning about we need to be better at informing the public of the impacts of science, so that way they can also be pushers of the need. So how can we work on our own communication so it is more broadly accepted?
Steve?
At the bit of the conversation that I'm now paying attention to, I'm wondering how this, for the people online, this is Steve Diggs, University of California. How would this conversation have been different a year ago in Nashville? Not paying attention to politics. I think that the situation with a lot of data facilities, we have this really fractionated landscape where things don't talk to each other. And it's very hard. I'm in a process right now where I'm mapping the landscape of all earth science data. And one of the things that I find with data facilities is they're really hard to get to map into a landscape. And the funding is uneven, and everybody's sort of doing their own thing. And I think that's no one's fault. It's historical, certainly. But I think going forward, do we think that there is a communication strategy that's good enough that it would stand up to today's scrutiny? And I think that we would be all well served to think along those lines, that if I have to stand up in front of somebody in Washington and, given the current environment, and pitch my data facility, will that stand up to scrutiny? And then make plans given that reality accordingly. Sometimes the best that we can hope for right now is to be overlooked, and for the funding to continue, and for us to carry on operations as we have. Is that going to be a reality in a year, 2 years, 3 years? This has kind of been a long thing coming, and what we're seeing now is more of an accelerator than an abrupt change. Because we've all talked about this future where it's going to be harder and harder to get funded. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to jump way ahead of the game and skate to where the puck is going to be, and then make all of our plans accordingly. And I know that's not easy to hear, but if I have my reality glasses on, that's what I see.
But I don't think we know where the bus is.
I do. I know exactly where it's going to be. It's going to be decreased funding overall for anything related to earth science. And that's going to make it rougher and rougher for domain repositories to survive. Now, putting a number on that, like how hard is it going to be? I would say moderately hard, but we can move faster than the government can. We're a bunch of smart people. We know how to innovate. We've been on field experiments where things break. We have to make things work. Let's put those skills to use. I mean, if you disagree with me in what I see as the future, I'd love to have that discussion.
I mean, one hope is that these new AI tools will allow for much greater efficiencies, and if we, survive the singularity, as they say, it'll be fine.
Yeah, excuse me, this is Matt Marion
Yeah,
from
Matt.
NCARS. Just following up on Steve's comment, I think his first thing he started with was what would this have looked like a year ago is an interesting question, because these discussions were being had 5 years ago when EarthCube was finishing, and this future of the CDF was being discussed. Some of these ideas of combined resources towards shared backup facilities, shared cloud provisioning, that was all discussed at the time, and didn't happen because the challenges of setting up an organization to enable that was really something no one wanted to take on at the time. So this is just accelerating some of those. I guess I'll posit that AI is not going to solve this problem. So I think there might be other types of things that could be pursued. They would take a lot of work. It would be hard to do, but, sort of, I'm thinking of like a NATO model, right? Like, if one group is attacked, everyone else sort of finds a way to back up. I'm part of other, not conversations, but I get emails from other groups about like universities who are trying to support each other in legal matters around government attacks, right? Like, if one gets sued, others will provide their legal counsels to support those lawsuits because every university will be impacted if they succeed, those kinds of things. So, just positing this, and I don't know how it would possibly be set up, but if every organization that was a member of the CDF was part of this sort of NATO for data facilities, that, member 7 lost their funding, well, then there'd be support through shared curation, through backups, through distribution. I don't know how it would work. Lots of details there, but that's probably the type of model that would need to be pursued to provide sort of a sector resilience, rather than all of us scrambling individually to say, who's my backup? Who's my backup funder, right? Which foundations can I throw some proposals at in the next 2 weeks? I don't know how else to develop resilience beyond a consortia effect sort of approach.
I'll just add 2 quick cents and just challenge you all to, go back to Brianna's talk yesterday morning and the importance of community. And, when EarthCube was sunset, I remember CDF coming to ESIP and kind of saying, in all of the sustainability planning that came out of EarthCube, one of the top things to be sustained was the CDF, right? And ESIP said, we are here, we will catch you, you will have a place to do what you want to do. And I'll say that Nick and Karen have been huge champion leaders in keeping this group moving forward. But, there hasn't been a lot of people showing up to all the calls. So I think I would just, as I'm walking out the door, I can challenge all of you to say, like, how do you want to lean into that community? And how do you want to support them as leaders, or who else wants to step up and lead to say, this is what the CDF needs, this is what this community needs, this is how we're going to work together to support these data facilities. So I like your thoughts, Matt, and I just challenge you guys on that, because this room is packed. We would have put you in a bigger room if I'd known this many people were coming, and that's amazing. So how do we get the momentum of this packed room to carry forward 365 days a year, or at least 12 months a year?
And there are non-government entities, nonprofit organizations, wealthy individuals that are very interested in, new science, trying to find ways to, allow people to access data more easily. And there may be, ways to try to, if we, as a group, have a whole number of facilities that say, we need, this sort of funding to organize, trying to maintain ourselves. I don't know, Susan, how do you get money to do stuff from people? I guess we're always like writing grants to government agencies, or we're part of government agencies. I've had a few, interactions with, like, the Berkeley Geochronology Center was supported by Gordon Getty. So, there's various things that we could look at, but that's not what we do, so, and we don't know that. So I don't know how we would want to maybe transition. Shelley? Oh, yeah. We'll go there. We'll go there and then there. Or you can talk about that.
Yeah, thanks. Susan, I want to thank you for putting that out there. I think the subtext of this meeting is that the monthly CDF meetings are not well attended at all. And the question we have here today is, so what do we do as a community? Clearly that kind of monthly, mostly informational seminars is not hitting a need. But there are a lot of people in this room today that are interested in CDF, or you're here for something. So we've got a couple of directions. We can maybe just meeting at the January and July ESIP meetings with sessions of interest to data facilities is what this community wants and needs. Maybe there's some something we actually want to work on, so it's less about let's just share information and have a seminar once a month, but we've identified something, maybe it's the NATO plan, but we've identified something that we care enough about that we want to move forward together. Or maybe there's an option that I'm not thinking of, but I think we do want to leave the room today with some kind of a sense of, do we keep going? And if so, in what way?
Just one quick follow-up. Where does the money come from? Looking at the CDF list, this may not be accurate, but the 44 members, everybody pitched in $20,000, which I know is a lot in some context today. Whatever amount that is could support a fair amount of centralization. So the money's going to come from the members. I realize that's the challenge, but I think that's how it has to work. Distributed model.
Shelley, over here. No, here. Okay, Steve.
Shelley, that's a mistake. I'm just trying to redeem myself from being a wet blanket before, and by being even more of a wet blanket. I think, Karen, to your question about how do we proceed, there's a fundamental question that we haven't answered. And that is, are we about delivering the data, or are we about surviving in our current forms as individual repositories? Because that's always moving and shifting. And people aren't afraid of change, people are afraid of loss, right? So if I come up to you and I say, I'm gonna change your life, you're like, here's $1 million. That's change I can believe in. But if I'm gonna take money from you, that's a change you won't like. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to be very clear. We wanna serve paleomagnetic data or hydrographic data. How do we do that, whether or not we survive in our current form, is a very important question to ask ourselves.
So, outside this room, internationally, are a number of very concerned entities having to do with Earth, space, and environmental science data in the US. I have countless emails. What's going on? What can we do? Well, that's lovely that they wrote, but you all are the key. So that's one nugget for you. Nugget number two, it's interesting to hear you talk about the budget. And what I just took away a moment ago is, if you can hang on to your budget, you're happy. But you're not paying attention to the puck that Steve's talking about. The puck is going. The budget is going to be devastating either today, tomorrow, or next year. So you have run room right now. Maybe when we learn about the budget, it will be devastating, and then you're going to run much faster, or you're going to be able to plan and have a year or so before the devastation happens. So I just want to put that in your minds, not because I want you to be afraid, but I want you to be empowered. You need to control the answer. You need to pay attention to what the researchers need, because we are all service providers. I am a service provider, you're all service providers. What is it that we need to make sure is in place for them? So I would encourage that. Second nugget. Third nugget. Some of you are aware I am trying to find money for you all because you are the problem solvers. We are talking to philanthropy, AG is talking to philanthropy tomorrow. It's literally money for you. So if that goes well, will you come to a meeting in September to help work out the architecture? It's a question. It's a question. Will you? Will you come to a meeting in September?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I cannot talk about this publicly. I promise to all of my leadership. We're being recorded, right, Susan?
Oh, stop.
Okay. So people online, this is confidential information for the ESIC meeting. I know you all, so I trust you to hang on to this. If it's not this philanthropy, there are others that are interested, and they're not the usual suspects. They're people who are very concerned about climate data. So if I can't get this batch, I'll go for another batch, but then the meeting has to happen quickly in order to start. I love Matt's word consortium, an international consortium, not a US-based consortium. I'm going to stop right there because I'm probably getting in trouble. So remember, confidential, everybody online.
So I don't have any secrets, so.
You wouldn't say if you did, right?
Or solutions, but I want to sort of double down on what I'm hearing from Matt, Steve, and Shelley, is that, okay, budgets are going to be going down. Any new money that comes in, we're going to have to manage it and spend it in a very different way. Our co-opetition model right now, where we all compete with each other for NSF funds to serve our own particular niche communities, that's not going to work as a sustainable model going forward. So that's what I think the CDF needs to be thinking about as this consortium, community, what have you, is with these limited funds, how can we continue to serve research and the broader society? So that, we're not providing answers, but we are saying we have to think about a different model. We can't just say, oh, when does the budget get better? Because we have to assume it won't. And so what can we do in a different model to make data available to society?
I'm not 100% sure that we have to, but I hear that both people, that there is a tendency to essentially abandon the domain repositories to go for generalist repositories, which I really feel would be the totally wrong approach, because I think people in domain have a track record with the people, so it's very important to keep that part of the model going. We just have to be smarter about allocation, use of our and more efficient with what we're doing. So therefore, there might be another bigger connection between us as a web data repositories and the science and the computing, like not the repositories, the access and the computing resources that we, as repositories, don't often have access to because we're not a research project. So maybe there's a way of more effectively collaborate with the supercomputing centers for providing services to us because we often don't need huge resources, but we need them consistently. So that was a problem we had a few years ago with the sustainability of where we asked for resources for the CDF. So so there might be cooperation in other ways we can do.
I just say, it's true, the funding landscape completely is going to be completely changed. I like this idea of a consortium with contributions. All these things are great for the funding side. But then, let's say the CDF got $100,000. What would you do with it? How would you prioritize what you do? I mean, I've heard a lot of great ideas. But I think the CDF has a really good story to tell in terms of efficiencies among large repositories, and that's a selling point to somebody who wants to see a return on their investment, right? So I think that message plus what you're actually going to do with that money is important to develop now, because the funding might come at a real quick pace, like Shelley suggested, and then you have to have something ready, or some ideas, more concrete ideas ready. And it also applies for the next ESIP director, by the way, in terms of how the mechanisms for this kind of thing works, because ESIP has traditionally not wanted to be in a pass-through funding kinds of business, and that might have to be looked at.
Here and then Matt.
I'd like to just hear a little bit more on, sorry, he's just talking, Mark. Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more on just going deeper on what you're saying. So domain repositories, they have a legacy, they're providing value. If are there parts, like to push on what you were asking, like are there parts of the stack that we could rethink are actually commoditized and can be standardized in a different way and consolidated in the way that because storage is something that people are kind of doing, they could be all doing the same way. So what are the parts of the domain repositories today that are actually unique and need to be preserved in these domain-specific containers or institutions? And what are the parts, because presumably there can be and there need to be new ways that we're thinking about consolidating infrastructure. So yeah, just to ask you for your thoughts on that.
I think you think about it the wrong way. I think you think about it in a very technical way, but in the end, it's all about trust and really finding people and working with them. So I think that is where I feel the domain repositories have been successful. And I think that is something that would be really hard to, I would think that is a value to the communities where trust has been built. So that is one thing that I think is very important. And that what the generalist repository might not be able to replicate. I do think on the technical side, there are certainly several things we could simplify and maybe combine on the infrastructure level, so it makes it much cheaper to store data. Like for us, we have to pay Google quite a lot of money, and have now seen with AI that people come and download our entire archive. So that's a lot of money that has to go, that we can't really control. So working with people who make that cheaper and easier and helping us in the back end would be very helpful. So there are some structures that we can simplify, or maybe we use existing platforms and not start a new one. And I do see lots of states trying to do the same thing, trying to rebuild infrastructure on the state level for data portals. So, and they are starting from scratch, they're reinventing everything. So there might be also something where we can help different states to really reuse stuff that has been built on a larger level. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Using of components, yeah.
Yep.
And keep going, it's just like, okay, is this the conversation for that? Like, what are the components, or where are those conversations?
So just to add to that, though, I think this is what you were getting at, is that there are clear and obvious technical things that we can share. You know, storage is an obvious one, and we could be better at that. Certain tools that we use, you know, if we're willing to not be so precious and bespoke to our community, which is very hard, we could be shared. But what would be an interesting challenge, and I think something that ESIP would be well positioned to support, is human capacity, because that's where we spend most of our money, is on humans. And so I don't know anything about your specific data, but I could produce a marginally decent metadata record for most of it, because I know the basics of metadata. And so there's specialized things that really have to be in those centers of trust. But then what are some of the human capacities that we can begin to share, and how can we use the CDF and ESIP to facilitate that? So that's what I would see, like if you got $100,000 to ESIP, is to try and figure out how to do something like that. What would the functional aspects, the human functional aspects of a consortium actually look like? So, because I know when I worked at a data center, our biggest issue was fractional people distributed across many projects. So imagine if you had one central ESIP funded person that supported all those little fractions across 10 data centers. What would that person do?
Matt, we got to wrap up here in a little bit, but.
Okay, I'll just agree with what's going on in terms of this parsing out and say that when we look at our costs, things like storage are trivial compared to our other costs. Our major costs in running a repository are around software maintenance and feature development, serving a particular community, and data curation where we're interacting with that community. And some of those are fairly non-compressible if you want to have relatively high quality data. You have to have a walkthrough with researchers to guide them to building a good data product. And that takes people time. So that's like, I think data curation within communities of practice is is going to continue to be a challenge. The place where I think we as a network can consolidate is to no longer have every single organization has their own software stack. Like we're all maintaining metadata editors, we're all maintaining data storage platforms, middleware platforms, compute workflows, and we could come together as a community, I think, and really consolidate on that. And so that we don't have, like I think Dryad's a great example of a lone wolf, right? Their own platform, like there's a lot of people that use it, but nobody else deploys it, right, Steve? I think we should be looking for shared platforms where multiple organizations can serve different communities of practice using the same software stack. And then we'll be able to start to at least cut out that inefficiency of implementation and maintenance and operations.
Well, I propose we discuss maybe that in the next meeting for the CDF, shared software stack, and how could that be possible? It's very tricky. We've talked about it quite a bit, but, if people can think about, and maybe we'll do, try to get a good survey on what people are using and like how, what you would be. Yes, yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to use something that's not bespoke, but it's hard to know. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. It was great to see everybody, and we had a full house. And our meetings are the fourth Wednesday of every month. And we'll try to keep some momentum going and figure something out.